Welcome back, webheads, to another scintillating episode of the Mediocre Spider-Man, where I once again implore you to listen. It's not necessarily the games I review that are mediocre, but rather me, Spider-Man. I'm the one that's mediocre. Anyway, today's mediocre game is, of course, Spider-Man 2, based on the 2004 movie. Ah yes, booing and jeering, the language of the layman. It's useless here though, as your negativity fuels me as I take that same negativity and use it to push forward positively. But seriously though, of course I don't mean the console game, but the infamously bad personal computer version, which, as we'll discover, is an entirely different radioactive beast. So let's start walloping those web snappers with the same gusto and energy of our Lord and Savior, Mr. Maguire.
Sorry, I don't feel well. Will you excuse me?
And swing face first into Spider-Man 2 for the PC. So we're going to need to delve a bit into the backstory for this one to put you in that comfy 2004 mindset. The Amazing Spider-Man comic book run was entering a golden age of its dark age, with multiple appearances by Ezekiel, and of course introduced the Sins Past storyline, which I cannot and will not recap here. Fortunately, in the realm of theatrical films, the wall crawler was instead swinging into high, with Spider-Man 2 poised to be the biggest moneymaker of the year, converting many of his detractors into believing he was now the hero that would save the box office.
Spider-Man was a hero.
Because of this popularity, Activision's adaptation of the first film also did exceptionally well, so they made sure to double down even harder the second time around, which included versions for the PlayStation 2, GameCube, Xbox, N-Gage, Game Boy Advance, Nintendo DS, PlayStation Portable, Mac, and of special interest to us, Windows. Vicarious Visions handled the DS and PSP, Digital Eclipse webbed up the N-Gage and GBA, and future Call of Duty head miner Treyarch developed the PS2, GameCube, Xbox, and PC versions. Which is something I would be saying to you if this was a sane and logical world. No, instead of just repeating the same success they had on the first game, where they just ported the console code over to the PC, Activision hired a studio to make a completely separate and insane version just for that platform, in an attempt to better utilize its unique capabilities. I don't know, you got me. To take on this monumental task, they hired somebody nobody has ever heard of, which is not all that surprising as this was Activision management that we're talking about. So specifically, I'm referring to the Fizz Factor, which was one of several studios that made up Foundation 9 Entertainment, and even more specifically, was an offshoot development branch of Amaze Entertainment, and started off their very brief developmental run with Spirit, Stallion of the Cimarron, forever free for the PC, which retailed for $19.99. Ugh, lies! Fizz then closed out their 7-year run with Charm Girls Club, My Perfect Prom, which was neither charming nor perfect. Maybe they thought the complex new web-swinging mechanics of the console version couldn't be properly processed and computized by modern PCs, but for whatever reason, Fizz Factor still had to sort of replicate what Treyarch were doing, but obviously had way less budget, time, experience, and a solid plan of action, which resulted in a product that almost plays itself, while simultaneously forcing you to play it too much. So with all that backstory out of the way, let's tumble and bumble over the many things that Spider-Man 2 for the PC completely belly flops on. So, wow. Right off the bat, we are greeted with a CGI cutscene of Otto crashing out over his Power of the Sun in the palm of his hand machine going haywire. This same exact cutscene happens hours into the console game, because before that, you get introduced to the basic mechanics, a bunch of characters, MJ, Harry, Jonah, Betty, Robbie, and even fight a few villains. But here, the game opens up with that disaster, so you get very little context or story setup at all, which is your first indication that this is not a long, robust game. In fact, a first-time playthrough, if you ignore all the side stuff, you can easily finish in about an hour and a half. This means a ton of stuff was cut out of the console game, like Black Cat, a bunch of Mysterio missions, the Shocker. Yes, thank you. And the subplots involving both Harry and MJ, so it's a very, very streamlined version of both the movie and the game itself, and it's terrible because of it. So that's already not a very good start. Things just seem to happen with very little rhyme or reason to them. For example, near the halfway point, after you've just finished fighting off Science Squid, you immediately walk outside and bam! You're just instantly trapped in a Mysterio illusion, with him not having been properly introduced yet. There's absolutely no breathing room between these segments. You're just thrown into each scenario with zero build-up, and that's mostly, and when I say mostly, I mean exclusively tied to the fact that there's no open world aspects to this version at all. Now I know what you're saying, but it kinda looks like you're swinging all over the Big Apple, and yeah, not quite. You can't even explore an apple slice, let alone the whole damn thing. You're basically given the same 3 or 4 blocks of downtown Manhattan space, which the game reuses a few different times, and has giant invisible walls locking you in. You're then usually given one main objective in this space: chase a car, fight rhinos, stop a prison escape, and you're then immediately moved into an indoors section, so it's much more of a level-based affair. So how does it handle web swinging? Well, it really doesn't, technically, as it brings together the worst of both worlds from Spider-Man 1 and 2. Yeah, your webs do have to attach to solid objects, but those objects are completely random web points that just hang in midair, so you aim with the mouse, click, and yeah, that's it. Once you attach to these web points, you swing at the exact correct height and angle every time, making it feel more automated, like as if you were playing a Wii game. No, that's too generous. As if you were suffering through one of those plug-and-play Wii knockoffs that Grandma got you. Now, if this was Spider-Man 1, where the web swinging was indeed very automated, I think this change to the PC version would have been acceptable. Not ideal, but acceptable. But because of the advances Spider-Man 2 on consoles made, this comes across as absolutely bonkers, insane, nuttier than Squirrel Girl poop. But I have to be sort of honest with myself, this system does work. It makes swinging across the city or the 3 blocks incredibly easy and or breezy, and you never have to do it for very long, so it's not like it's frustrating or bad, it's just kinda brain dead. Wall crawling, on the other hand, is a different matter, as whenever you adhere to any surface and go in any angle other than straight up, the camera does a bizarre thing where it feels like Spidey is stationary, but the entire universe shifts around him, which is, yeah. Keep your paper bag ready, bombastic bag man. You might need it if the blowing of chunks becomes a possibility. Crawling on the actual walls is also a slow and plodding affair, but what's funny, and I'm sure was not intended by the luminaries at Fizz Factor, is that you can expedite the process greatly by just spamming the jump or right-click button, which results in what you see here. Now, as you quote-unquote explore the game world, you'll come across these blue halos, which triggers side missions that are so banal and inconsequential that they're really not worth doing. But fortunately, they're also not quite as annoying as, well, you know.
Oh no, my balloon!
These seem to boil down to the same 2 to 3 tasks: shooting colored targets, collecting colored targets, or swinging through floating rings. And before you say, oh, is it like Superman 64? It's almost exactly like Superman 64. These are timed, and it's easy to miss a ring, because eventually they start placing the active one in a hard-to-reach place, and you get no satisfaction in finding and completing any of these, because the awards seem to be non-existent. It basically just gives you points, and the points are much like itchy and scratchy money in that nobody accepts them. That's because there's no store or level up system in Spider-Man 2 for personal computers. It just doesn't exist, so the points or XP are essentially worthless. See somebody getting mugged in a dark alley? Well, don't help them, because what are you gonna get out of it? It's like Uncle Ben always said, don't do shit for no one. But this is actually one of the things that really boils my spider balls the most. Extra content that you can do aside from the main story, but ultimately has no point. And for whatever reason, they went super hard with this stuff, as there's 2 more different collectibles that you can find in any given level as well, but again, for who? For why? These include exotic spiders that are scuttling about, I guess ones that escaped from Oscorp, and criminals that have also flown the coop, complete in old-timey black and white uniforms. I mean, grab them if you want, but there's better things to do. Except not really, because one of the most annoying sections of any Spider-Man game I've ever seen is contained here, and that's the second Mysterio level. Now, even the console version of SM2 has its low points, but this one is maybe just a bit worse because it's so long, drawn out, and just boring. Fizz Factor definitely had to copy from Treyarch's paper here a little bit, but their version of floating around in a weird nexus made up of chunks of New York, which is just a combination of smoke and holograms, is such a slog to get through, and you can only navigate it in one specific route, and it just takes forever to do. And then, when you first get to these advanced turrets, it's not exactly clear what you have to do, so you get your little blue spider butt pounded into oblivion the first few times. And there's no checkpoint system either, so you have to do the whole thing over again. Now, obviously the graphics here are not exactly PC bleeding edge standards circa 2004. Doom 3 released the same year, but they're not that much worse than what was seen in the console version. It's the music and sound effects, though, that are a good step worse, as the game is largely absent of the swelling orchestral tracks that accompany the versions of the game that most of you are probably familiar with. And Toby phones in his performance even more this time around, if that were possible.
Hey, he's taking my car!
Wait right here. I'll find a phone and call the police.
Oh my god, will you listen to that? I have to ask, did Toby do a line right before he recorded that one cutscene from Spider-Man 3 for the Wii and the PS2?
All those tests and nothing!
The final oh my god, the state of this game thing that I'd like to give out about is the sheer simplicity of the combat. You have an attack button, a jump, a dodge you only really have to do once in the entire game, and that's all you get. The attack button changes from webs to melee depending on what you're pointing at and how far you are to a target, so yeah, a lot of automation. You also never gain anything new. No new web attacks, special moves, combos, or grabs. What you start with is what you have until you see the credits, which has to be only a handful of people. With all that being said though, there are 1 or 2 things I actually kinda liked. Yeah, I know, it's weird. Got a problem? Wanna fight about it? Let's get to it. As simple, stripped down, basic, and boring as the fisticuffs can be in this Spider-Man adventure, there's one aspect to it that weirdly feels good. As you beat up and kill certain enemies, as only Spider-Man can, you fill up an adrenaline bar, and once that's topped off, you can basically one-shot everything save for bosses. The coloring on the spider suit looks cool, he does these big swings for each hit so they're really impactful, and it makes the playing of the game go far faster, so that's always a positive. The next thing, which I really appreciated, is the inclusion of a villain that's exclusive to this version and the GBA, that's never been done before or since, I think, and that's the Mighty Puma, an underrated Spidey villain if I've ever seen one. Aww, pss, 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 pss. He's not just a boss fight either. He gets a whole chase sequence over the rooftops, playing a little game of cat and mouse in an under construction building, until Spidey then brings his evil plot crashing around his tufty little ears, which was the stealing of Mary Jane's car. Look, I didn't say it was all good, I just mean I appreciated the inclusion of the little orange tabby cat. This flabbergasting game does innovate in one other particular area, and was years ahead with Spider-Man 3 in that it implemented a feature known as Fast Moment Situations, where a button prompt appears on screen and you have only a few precious seconds to hit it, so you can avoid some damage. Now, a few of these are actually quite funny, not quite to the level of Spider-Man 3 or especially Web of Shadows, but they're still kind of fun, and again, ahead of their time. Finally, there's a few other things that Spider-Man 2 PC does really well that I'd like to talk to you about. Nah, I'm just playing, that's it. Let's wrap this one up. Now, is this the worst Spider-Man video game ever made? I'll cut the tension immediately by saying, no, you're crazy. Absolutely not. I'd much rather play this over the likes of Web of Fire, Arcade's Revenge, Atari 2600, The Sinister Six Point and Click, and I don't know, a half dozen others I can't really remember right now. Is it the worst version of Spider-Man 2 though? Well, I mean, yeah. Maybe. Getting my mind in the right headspace though, at the time of this release, I can't imagine how pissed PC-only gamers must have been when they saw reviews of the console versions in magazines or over at a friend's house, and then bought this for their Windows operating system of choice, XP I believe, booted it up, and then got this. If that might have been you in 2004, then my heart truly goes out. But I also laughed derisively at you. Suck it, PC peasants! Console wins once again! But seriously, how does one score a game such as this? At the time, this was awful compared to its big console brother, and an insult to life itself when I think about it. But in 2025, it's not nearly as bad as you'd think, and has a wonky, doofy charm about it. So I think I'll be a bit generous here, and award Spider-Man 2 for the PC 2.5 floating web points out of 5. It mostly works, it's brief, and it has Puma in it, and you can't beat that. I mean, you can beat that easily, actually, but and that's another spectacular, amazing, and sensational episode in the bag of pulsating, chittering spiders. Duh, get that out of here! And if you know of any other Spidey ventures you'd like me to go toe-to-toe with in the future, hit me up in the comments below or swing on over to my social media. Until then, Excelsior, true believers, and I'll see you next time on the Mediocre Spider-Mat.